He understood people and he trusted them. But I don't know whether that was a fault or not. He trusted too much. He was so sweet.
That was Vivian talking about her son, Bruce Cucchiara, a victim of homicide. Here is a picture of Bruce. This is a case that actually came to me at CrimeCon. I was sitting at the table with Danielle Hallen. You know, we have a crime after crime table that we share usually at CrimeCon, and someone came up and handed me a yellow folder, and on this folder is a label that says Murder for Hire, the cold case murder of Coach Bruce Cucchiara. In that folder is a bunch of materials, including a police narrative about arriving on the scene, several articles. Many of the articles I've been able to pull up the online versions of, so we'll be going through those as we go through everything today, but there was a few materials that I couldn't find online, starting with the police narrative. So let's jump into that and see what we can learn about what happened on Tuesday, April 24th, 2012, approximately 10:18 a.m. Unit 721 of the 7th District handled a homicide by shooting at the Mark 7 apartments. This is happening in New Orleans, Louisiana. Of course, if you remember, CrimeCon was in New Orleans this year, so his family decided to go there and try to raise exposure to his case. This is becoming more and more frequent at CrimeCon, and I think it's a great use of CrimeCon, quite honestly. A male shot in the head at the location in the parking lot. Shortly thereafter, Engine 36 of the New Orleans Fire Department arrived on scene to render aid to the victim. EMS, Emergency Medical Services, also arrived on the scene, and they stabilized the victim and then transported him to University Hospital. However, shortly thereafter, the victim died from his injuries. The officer that responded to the scene met with the manager of the apartment building, and she, I believe it's a she, stated that on Tuesday, April 24th, 2012, the victim entered her office looking for 4515 Papania Street. She advised the victim that the address for the apartments that they were at was 4508, 4510, and 4512 Papania Street. Typically, street numbers, they'll have even numbers on one side of the street and odd numbers on the other side of the street. So it seems like he was right across the street from where he was supposed to be. Back to the report. The victim stated that he was going to his vehicle, a 2010 Ford F-150, to check for the correct address. He walked out of the leasing office, and moments later, the manager heard a pop. So there's a little bit more to the police narrative, but it's largely repeating that same information. I want to start with just a little bit of information from an article that's no longer available online. At least I can't find it for some reason. At wwltv.com, the title of this article is "Murdered Kid's Sports Coach Was Trying to Make New Orleans Better, Says Friends." This was posted on April 24th, 2012. It's written by Tanya Dahl. Close friends of the Covington man say he was working to make things better in the Crescent City. And then here is a quote from a friend of his. "Bruce was my best man in my wedding. I was best man in his wedding, godfather to his oldest son." And that is from his friend Les Heidelberg. Continuing with more quotes from Les. "Bruce coached baseball, basketball, soccer, football. Not too many people do that. He gave so much to Covington. He gave so much to his kids. He was a family man." So from what I understand, Bruce had a previous marriage. He had 2 adult children at the time of the shooting. Let me go ahead and just bring up the picture of him so we can focus on that as we're going through all this. He had recently gotten remarried and had a 6-year-old stepson. But his friends also talk about the fact that he was coaching in these kids' leagues even before he had children. This was a guy that really gave a lot to his community for a long, long period of time. This autumn, Cucchiara was getting ready to walk his daughter down the aisle and welcome another grandchild into the world. On Tuesday, those dreams came to an abrupt end in a New Orleans East parking lot. They have to do something about the crime over in New Orleans East. When someone is going there to buy a building to make it a better place and they get murdered in the process of doing it, that's insane to me, said Heidelberg. He's also friends with the mayor at that time, Mike Cooper. Bruce is. And Bruce's friends say that his wallet and his phone were missing from the crime scene. By all accounts, when you're looking at this from on the outset, it looks like a simple robbery situation. And I don't know if we can absolutely rule that out. There's a lot to point in the direction of this being something else, something far more nefarious. We're going to touch on that a little bit as we go through today's episode, but I'm really trying to keep focus on the simple fact that we have a shooter. If he was hired by someone else or if he was just making a crime of opportunity, we have a specific person that we're looking for, and we need to try to drill in to find that person. And we need your guys' help to try to make that happen. So please share this video in New Orleans. Actually, share it everywhere, because quite honestly, if this is a situation where the shooter might have been paid by someone to do this, there could be a good chance that he doesn't even live in that state anymore. At least not in the city, but possibly not in Louisiana at all. So we really want to raise exposure to this case. So please help me do that. Before we get into the news articles, we're going to stop at legacy.com and learn just a little bit more about Bruce. Bruce Felix Cucchiara passed away Tuesday, April 24th, 2012. He was born on December 28th, 1954 in New Orleans. The beloved husband of Anne Solieu Cucchiara, he is survived by his children and their mother. Bruce was a dedicated Christian, a respected community leader and businessman. A graduate of St. Paul's School with the class of 1972, he remained active in the Alumni Association and St. Paul's Foundation Board. He received his undergraduate degree from Southeastern Louisiana University and began his career in the banking and financial industry. He was the first president of Resource Bank based in St. Tammany Parish and was the CFO of SECO, a real estate development company in Covington. An avid sports fan, he dedicated decades of his life to Covington's youth as a volunteer baseball and basketball coach. A dedicated member of Trinity Church, he recently traveled to Romania on a mission to spread the gospel and lead others to Christ. Moving on to an article at Fox 8 Live, this one posted April 25th, 2012. Someone gunned down a well-known Covington businessman Tuesday morning in broad daylight in New Orleans East. Now, as police search for his killer, his friends and family struggle to understand why this happened. Les is also quoted in this article. He's just talking about Bruce being one of the funniest people that he knew. He would just light up a room. But we get some comments from other people that live in the area of the shooting. Let's go ahead and get those comments real quick. A man who heard the gunshot from around the corner said, "It was just a sad thing because when I see the guy, he had a suit on, he looked like a nice gentleman. I was like thinking, why'd they kill this man? I felt bad for him." People who live at the complex say they can't believe what happened. It is shocking. Nothing like this never happens around here. I've been here 5.5 years, never seen that. It's always quiet around here, Curtis Washington said. Police say robbery appears to be the motive for Cucchiara's murder. So far, there are no suspects in the crime. NOPD Superintendent Ronald Serpis said Wednesday, "We want to continue to encourage people to call Crime Stoppers. We think there are people in the community that saw this happen. We believe there are people who can give us good information on how to bring that case to a close. We're desperately trying to get that information." Cucchiara leaves behind 2 grown kids and a 6-year-old stepson. He had just gotten remarried last year. Here we are 7.5 years later. This case is still unsolved. We need more help. We need some of you out there to step up and help us with this. Let's take a look at the location real quick just to get a sense of what's going on. So this is Papania Drive. And this is the apartment building that he stopped at to talk to the manager to try to get his bearings of where he was. Google Maps believes that this building across the street from there is the location that he was looking for, 4515 Papania Drive. It actually has two different addresses tied to this location. I've never quite seen this before, but it's kind of in a commercial plot of land. It looks like it used to be some type of former event center and things like that. So there is an address, at least Google thinks, 4515 Papania Drive is kind of the front section of the building, but it also comes up as being on Dwyer Road with a much longer address. And I believe that's just kind of the back entrance to the building that leads to the big parking lot. But if we take a look at it from the front, you can see, just to kind of give us an idea of what's going on here, I think this is the building that he was trying to go see. I'm not sure what happened. I believe he had a GPS in his truck, so I'm kind of curious how he didn't get to the right address. Admittedly, I've done all kinds of different views on this map. I've gone through all the different dates that they have available, and it's really not easy to determine the address numbers here. You know, some communities are very good about like having the address numbers painted on the curbs or something like that. That's really not happening here. So it could be that he drove through here. Maybe he thought this wouldn't be the type of building that he would be there to look at, so he didn't believe that was the right address, decided that he was going to go across the street, pulled into this parking lot here, went in and spoke to the manager, came back out to the parking lot, and this is where it happened. Now, I know if you guys are like me, you're looking at this and saying, hey, there's a gate there. The gate looks like it's been added recently, somewhere between 2017 and 2018. It wasn't there at the time. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and roll the view back so we can get a better sense. This is from May 2011. So you can see no gate there. The parking lot's much more open. Also, I got to tell you, in several of the map views I've seen, there's people that just hang out all around here. And I've seen some map views where there's groups of people just hanging out in the parking lot. There is a mini market that's kind of here on the corner. There's people hanging out on the side of the mini market, sometimes around in front, but always it seems to be a cluster of people on the side. So certainly seems like there should be witnesses. I mean, that's one of the maddening things about this. I'm seeing so many photos where people are literally, this guy has a chair. He's literally just hanging out there. I'm really, really surprised that we don't have a witness that has stepped up. Now, I have heard there are some witnesses, and we're going to get into some information that one of those witnesses provided. We even have a composite sketch. But I'm very surprised we haven't heard details about how the shooter got away. That's probably the biggest one. What direction did the shooter take off in? If the shooter was on foot, did the shooter get in a car? There's a lot of details that we just don't have when it comes to the investigation of what's going on here. And for a case this old, I'm kind of surprised that we don't have more detail about that. So that's kind of the layout. I don't know. You know, he was working at a company where they would kind of buy properties and they could do some community improvement type projects. I believe that might have been the pretense that he was sent down here to look at a property specifically for purchasing it and then turning it into something else. I don't know if that might have been, you know, a shopping area like a strip mall or maybe some more housing, something like that. But for some reason, he doesn't go to the right address. He goes somewhere else, and then he gets shot. Now, just to be very upfront with you guys, one of the theories is that he was sent to this location effectively for, you know, the title of the folder says it, a murder for hire. What's interesting about that is when you consider he was given an address and he didn't go to that address, he went to another address, but this murder still effectively happens. Is it as feasible? Admittedly, we're talking, you know, he was just right across the street from where that location is. If we are considering a murder for hire type situation and taking a look at this map again, you know, getting him back into this down Dwyer Road, back into this parking area back here, that might have been a pretty decent location. You've got people's backyards that are facing into that. I haven't seen a whole lot of people. In one of the Google Maps, there's some foot traffic that happens here. It looks like a couple just walking a dog, but nothing like the amount of people that we see by the market, between the market and the apartments. So Is it a plan that somehow shifted when he went to the wrong location? Maybe the person that was waiting for him at that location saw he was over there and moved over there to do it. I don't think we can rule that out, but let's go ahead and continue with another article at WDSU.com. Police investigating after man killed in New Orleans East. This is from April 25th, 2012. Friend Wayne Aquan said Cucchiara always wanted to help others. Quote, Bruce had a compassionate heart to help people, and that's probably why he was where he was and what happened, how it did. He was trying to take something and make it better, Aquan said. Covington Mayor Mike Cooper said he has been Cucchiara's friend for a long time. We made our homes here. We wanted to make a difference in our city, he said. Over at WWL TV, we get a comment from his wife. My husband was murdered for a cell phone and a wallet. That was from his wife, Anne. She said no amount of money could equal the value of her husband's life. Continuing at NOLA.com, $27,500 reward in Bruce Cucchiara murder. A hefty cash reward for information leading to the capture of Covington businessman Bruce Cucchiara's killer is not just extra incentive for someone to come forward and turn a suspect in, according to the leader of the organization that offered up the money on Thursday. It's also a tribute to how beloved a member of his community 57-year-old Cucchiara was. Several of his family's supporters donated the funds for the larger-than-usual reward. That was being offered through Crime Stoppers at that time. There is still a Crime Stoppers reward, but now the family is also offering a reward directly. We'll get to all those details by the end of this. At one point, Cucchiara's 90-year-old mother addressed a gathering of reporters and told them in a feeble voice she hopes to live long enough to see her son's killer get caught so that she can look him in the eye and ask, why did you do this? Why would someone do this to my Bruce? Vivian Elmer Cucchiara said, choking back sobs. He was such a loving child and a good man. Finally, we get to some description of the suspect here. The suspected shooter has been described as being in his mid-20s, between 5'9" and 6 feet tall, with a slim build. He is clean-shaven, has a possibly light brown complexion, and was wearing a black knit cap, a thick black jacket with a hood underneath, black pants, and black shoes. The NOPD thinks the suspect lives near where the shooting happened, and the department considers him armed and dangerous. They also point out that if you call Crime Stoppers, you don't have to give your name. You can do it anonymously, and you will still be eligible for the reward. We talk about this on the channel often. Basically, you give the tip. They give you a randomized number. If you hear that the case has been solved, you call back with that number, and they'll let you know if that was the tip that solved the case. And if it was, then you get the reward. So that's how that works. But like I mentioned, that would be for the smaller of the two rewards that are being offered at this time. In terms of this suspect description, not very strong. I do believe that we're talking about an African American. That's not even being clearly defined here. Between 5'9" to 6 feet tall. I mean, how vague of a range can we get? It's really not a very strong description. And once again, we're just not getting any information. How did they leave the scene? What direction did they go in? None of that stuff is coming out here. What's worse is this. This is not a joke, people. This is the composite sketch that has been released for this case. And it's tough. When I first started looking into these materials, it was obvious to me that the point of view of the family is there's some type of bigger thing going on here. People in power, possibly manipulating the situation. And when I come into these cases, I always I can acknowledge the family's position, but I really have to try to wipe myself clear and start from scratch and just see, where does this actually take me? When I see things like this is seriously, I think, the worst police composite that I've ever seen. I really can't think of one that's more terrible than this. This looks like something that, I don't know, that a child might have drawn or something. I'm just blown away. I don't think this composite sketch is super helpful. I'm really curious why we wouldn't have a new one by this point, 7 years later. We know this one isn't working. This was released back in 2012, released just a few days, a matter of days after the shooting. I don't know. I'm really frustrated by this sketch, in case you can't tell. Police believe robbery was the motive for the shooting. Now they've released a composite sketch of what the gunman may look like. So I have spoken to some of the family in this case. The robbery angle is kind of interesting because all that was taken was his cell phone and his wallet. Those were on him. But keep in mind, he was going back to his truck. From what I understand, he was already at his truck when the shooting happened. The door was open. So that means the keys were either in the door or in his hand. You have someone in their mid-20s pulling off something like this strictly to steal a cell phone and a wallet when they've got truck keys laying on the ground and a relatively recent Ford F-150 standing in front of them, and they have to flee the scene. They have to get away from this. I don't get it. On top of that, I also hear from the family there might have been some other items of value in the vehicle, including an iPad. That stuff was left behind. Was this a real robbery, or is this a situation where this was made to look like a robbery? I think that's a question that we really need to consider as we continue looking forward in this case. And I'm not trying to suggest that the police were involved in any way. It could be that this composite sketch is the result of what a witness gave to them. And maybe a witness gave them bad information or just was so vague this is all they could come out with. I don't know. So, of course, coming out of the banking industry, then rolling into the real estate industry, we're talking big money that is swirling around Bruce and his business dealings. And I'm wondering if that's playing a factor in what happened to him. On top of that, we get this kind of really bizarre turn that happens with a man named Richard Sharp. Let's jump over to another article at NOLA.com. This one posted June 4th, 2015. Texas man pleads guilty. Richard Sharp pled guilty to various felony charges related to his slandering a Sant Tammany business and its principal investors. Sharp agreed to pay $600,000 in restitution and submit to 5 years supervised probation in order to have a 5-year sentence suspended. There's a lot more to what he actually did. This is a guy that basically tried to embezzle money, tried to get into business with lies, wasn't able to provide the things he said he was going to, including cash. He was going to provide business contacts to other countries and all that kind of stuff. Seems like this guy was really just a shyster, but there's something else that he did around all this. Among the false accusations Sharp leveled, prosecutors said, were that GDH International and some of its investors were somehow involved in the unsolved murder of Covington businessman Bruce Cucchiara, who was shot and killed in eastern New Orleans in April 2012. Now, here's a statement from him, of course, after he's been busted and he's going through this whole court process. I distorted facts, spread rumors, and engaged in libelous, defamatory, and slanderous actions, Sharp confessed. I made sure that these rumors were seen and delivered to Bruce Cucchiara's family. It's terrible that families have to go through having a loved one murdered like this, but then to know that someone else, if he's being honest here, he's really lying about the situation and then sending those lies directly to Bruce's family. Pretty awful. Now, in speaking to Bruce's family, I've come to understand that Bruce actually played a bit of a part in Richard Sharp being found out for, I think, for the embezzlement angle. So does that put Richard Sharp in play as someone potentially that we should be looking at related to Bruce's shooting? I mean, we now have him essentially pointing the finger at someone else saying, hey, you know, I think this company and members of this company are responsible for it. I don't know. I'm just presenting the information that I can find to you guys and trying to make sense out of this. And this is obviously a case that doesn't have a ton of current media. I think that's why the family was working so hard to try to raise some more exposure, get some more attention, and bring that towards this case. Here is a picture of Mr. Sharp. And there's one other comment this article that Action News 17 has that I just wanted to tack on to this. This is another quote from him. "I further admit that I fabricated arguments to the court wherein I claimed that Bruce Cucchiara was my star witness after Bruce was murdered." Interesting. So the guy that I hear basically found out this guy was a fraud, was somehow going to assist him in some type of court case that he had against someone else. I don't know. There's a lot of aspects to this Richard Sharp thing that are just unbelievable for me, but I don't know if we're just talking about someone that is just kind of a manipulator and he's been found and he's just floundering at this point, or is this someone that is really part of some mechanism that ended Bruce's life? I kind of find it hard to believe with what I'm seeing here. It seems more like this is a guy that just lies every which way he can to try to get ahead. But I don't know for sure. The latest article I could find on this case is from September 4th, 2015, posted at WDSU. It's titled, "North Shore Businessman's Killing Still Fresh in Family's Mind." Basically, WDSU did a segment for their television station, Channel 6, where they got the family out there to the site where Bruce's life ended and had his 2 older children out there. 3 years later, his family is finally visiting the spot where he was shot. "It's definitely difficult," his daughter, Caitlin Cucchiara PQ, said. "It's not easy to think that this was the last place he was, but I know that he's at peace now." However, his children have remained restless. They are still plagued with questions, including who would gun down such a beloved member of the Covington community and a prominent figure in their lives. "I've been able to block some of the stuff out," Christopher Cucchiara, Bruce's son, said. "I'm just waiting for detectives to make some headway, and I think once they make an arrest, I'll be able to deal with it in a different way." After speaking to the apartment manager, Cucchiara was walking back to his truck when gunshots rang out. I'm pointing that out because it's saying gunshots, and actually in the police narrative that I started this video with, it's interesting because it describes it as a pop. Most of the narrative that I'm seeing with the news stories is that it was a single shot. I don't know if that is actually true or not. I'm hearing some different information from the family, but that's why I'm pointing it out. This article is the first one that kind of points towards there might have actually been more than one shot that occurred here. New Orleans Police Detective Winston Harbin said Cucchiara was found lying next to his truck. He said all indications from the case show that Cucchiara was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Harbin said no witnesses to the crime have identified themselves. As you can see, there's a lot of foot traffic coming in and out of this apartment. I think in 2012, it wasn't any less. I doubt that, Harbin said. So we know there was some witness because we got the composite sketch. We know there's other people that were around and responded to the area soon after the shooting. But considering the quality of that composite, obviously we don't have several witnesses contributing information here. And Harbin's wondering, and I think he's making a great point. There was people around there. I'm certain of it myself. The time of day that this is going on, 10 o'clock in the morning, looks like it's a regular hang for a lot of people between that parking lot and the store. I'm very, very surprised that we don't have someone stepping up. And if they're not stepping up, what's the limiting factor there? Is it truly that it's someone that does live in the area and they're afraid of repercussions? Or are they just afraid of repercussions in general and they don't want to risk it at all and they don't want to speak up? I don't know. Harbin said police would like to track down one particular person, a man in the apartment complex who was working on a bicycle before Cucchiara's killing. He said the man was seen leaving the apartments on his bicycle with a bag after the shooting. Harbin believes that some of Cucchiara's personal items that were reported missing might have been in that bag. Well, the way that's phrased raises a whole another interesting point. What if the shooter didn't take anything? What if he shoots Bruce and he just gets out of there, but then you have someone else that's watching this all go down. He goes over, takes the watch, takes the wallet, and takes off. Now, what police have assumed is a robbery, especially with what we're hearing here, doesn't look like a robbery at all. They're not saying they're looking for the shooting suspect that he took off on a bike. They're saying there was some guy that was seen there working on his bike. He takes off eventually with a bag, and they think some of Bruce's items might be in that bag. If that pans out to be actually true, the shooter might not be the same person. And now we're talking about a situation where the motive cannot be simple crime of opportunity, robbery, gone wrong type situation. We've got something else at play here. And I can tell you the family definitely feels like there's something else at play. As a matter of fact, I've been speaking to the family to see if they will come on. I do believe we're going to have one of Bruce's children on the channel very soon. But I just wanted to share a little bit of information that they put together in this packet that they handed me at CrimeCon. The title on this handout is "He's Too Rich and Too Powerful, You Won't Get Anywhere." And apparently that is a quote that they heard as they were asking around about someone of interest being possibly involved with this case. In a section that they call What We Know, no one claims to know Bruce was headed to New Orleans to look at a potential investment property in New Orleans East. We cannot find email evidence either. That's a very strange aspect to all this. He's working for a company. He obviously has coworkers. Why wouldn't someone else be able to back up the story? Yes, we know that we were considering a property out there. Also, I've looked at, all kinds of photos of that property. No one has bought it. I can't find any information online about that property being for sale at any point. I can tell you the family seems to be considering that maybe Bruce thought it was the apartments that he was down there to buy. I can't find any information about that being up for sale at that time either. And obviously the address is incorrect to the point where Bruce is going back out to his truck to double check it. So something very strange about all this, and especially that they can't find any email evidence of him making this appointment, going to this appointment. Let me ask you guys another question. If you've ever done a real estate transaction, how often do you go somewhere where you're not meeting someone to take a look at the thing you're thinking about buying? Bruce is just going to drive around this area and kind of scout it from the outside, and that's it, a businessman like this? I sincerely doubt it. I think that there would have been an appointment made, likely with another, like a real estate agent or a previous owner, someone that could at least let him into the facility or just show him around it, talk to him about the area. I can't believe he would just drive down there just to kind of eyeball it from the outside. Maybe, but I think it'd be much more believable to think that he was going down there to meet someone. And does the family have information to support that or not? Hopefully we'll get them on the channel here and we can ask them about that. The other thing that they note here is also that the building was not on the market. I think they're talking about likely the Mark 7 apartments. But like I said, I've looked into the other property as well. I can't find any listing for it. Circumstantial evidence that they've collected points to a business partner that had a $5 million life insurance policy on Bruce. They're saying that the business partner won't cooperate fully with police. According to phone records, that business partner calls Bruce at 9 a.m. The business partner gets off the phone with Bruce, makes a call to a different phone number that's very short, and then calls that different phone number again, and it's even shorter. Then the business partner calls his own office, and then his phone effectively goes silent until sometime after the shooting. They learned that the last person who talked to Bruce on the phone is connected to the business partner. So Bruce actually contacted someone. I don't know if he was actually at the scene or on his way to the scene, but apparently there's some connectivity between the person that Bruce was talking to and this business partner that had the life insurance policy. There was a major $1 million lawsuit happening against the business partner, and Bruce might have been a key witness in that lawsuit. The lawsuit involved the sale of a water company. Business partner stated that he had his worker go through Bruce's office to try to find a will. That becomes a very interesting conversation with the family. I'm going to save it for when the family's here to talk about how all that plays out. Business partner states that he believed Bruce got into a fight with his wife and came to the office and then ripped up his own will. That's kind of interesting because, of course, his will wouldn't only be taking care of his current wife. It would likely could address his previous wife, but would certainly be addressing his children from his prior marriage. The original copy of the will was never located, but 2 copies were found. Bruce and his wife were having marital issues. I don't know if that supports the story that maybe Bruce went and tore up his own will, but it's kind of interesting to me because we have the family finding copies of the will that are showing his children in particular being taken care of by the will. I don't know why he would then go and just completely shred up his will. I mean, if anything, wouldn't you talk to your lawyer and make amendments to your existing will? Maybe, if you're having problems with your current wife, make adjustments to that particular section and then have it notarized or have it saved somewhere. I don't know why you would just shred up your will and all of a sudden this great financial plan that you had for your children from your previous marriage just disappears. But it seems like that might be exactly what happened. That's just kind of a brief overview. We're going to try to get into more detail on that with a family member of Bruce's, one of his children, as long as we can get them here on the channel. I'm still a little up in the air about it. These are people that have to live with this going forward. They have to live with, they've already lost their father. It seems like they might have lost some of what their father was planning for them in his will. There's a lot of very hard things that this family has gone through. So I'm working with them. We'll see if it comes together and if we can bring them here on the channel to help us understand this case more. I do feel like there's another whole layer to this case that I really can't go into here without one of them here to kind of guide us through it. So I'm hoping that that will come together. But that doesn't mean that you guys can't help. Even if there is some type of architect to what happened to Bruce, ultimately, there's this guy that pulled the trigger, and that's the guy that we need to find. If we find that guy, it might lead to everything else. It might not. We might find out this was some crime of opportunity. It was a simple robbery. I don't know. So I think it's really important that we focus on that guy right now. And that's why I'm putting this video up. I hope that you will share this video in the New Orleans area and outside of that. Maybe that composite sketch, maybe that does mean something to someone. Maybe someone looks at that and says, you know what? I remember that time period. I lived down there. I think I know who that was. We certainly need tips called in on this. So if you do want to contact Crime Stoppers, I've got their contact information in the description box below. Their reward, at least as it's listed on their website right now, is $2,500. And remember, you can do that anonymously. But on top of that, at justiceforbruce.com, we've got another way where you can submit tips here. You can also remain anonymous, and this will get you up to a $40,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and subsequent conviction of the suspects responsible for this crime. Families offering $40,000 to try to figure out what happened to Bruce and to bring that person to justice. Sounds like a pretty good amount of money, especially for someone that is sitting at the side of a mini mart all day. I know there was someone out there. I know they have the information. I just don't know what it's going to take to move them to do the right thing and to help this family see justice. Unfortunately, we started this video with a clip of his mother. We also commented along the way about, we quoted her talking about she hopes that she lives long enough to see justice for her son in this case. But unfortunately, that won't happen. We can see here that Vivian actually passed away November 13th, 2014. And from what I understand, between Bruce's passing and her passing, there were several other family members that passed as well. This has just been a very, very trying time for the Cucchiara family. I'm really sorry that you guys went through that period of time, and I'm sorry that here you are 7 years later, and you still have the pain of not knowing what happened to Bruce. And I'm hoping that us raising exposure is going to help with that. So just in case we do work this out and they do get on the channel, I want your brain scratchers help. Think about everything that we talked about here today. Write some great questions in the comments down below. I'm going to be going through those. I'm going to be picking specific questions to help me with the interview. I think together we can make something really special out of that and maybe get the right information out there to help law enforcement move this case forward. Thankfully, this is still an active case. Is it a cold case? Yes. But from what I understand, the investigator is working on it. So I'm hopeful that we can see some movement here if we can just get the right tip to help this family. Do you have that information? It's just a phone call. All the contact information that you need is in the description box below. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of BrainScratch. I can't do this without you, and I want to let you guys know that I appreciate each and every one of you out there that watches this, but I especially appreciate the people that share this content as well. We need to keep this exposure up and raise it. The last article on this case is from 4 years ago, so it definitely needs the help. Just a big thank you to Chris, who is a new patron, and Stephen Rich Bays, who have also joined on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel here. If you'd like to support the Lord and Arts channel, you can do that at www.lordandarts.com, where you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, buy the audiobook. All of it helps support my efforts here, helping these families, just like the Cucchiara family that we looked at today. Take care, everyone. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.